So good evening, everyone, and you're very welcome to our Moving Goalposts webinar this evening. I'm Ita Murphy, and I'm the coordinator of the Wellbeing Network in West Cork. We're based in the National Learning Network in Bantry, and we work very closely with the HSE, Health and Wellbeing, Mental Health Services across West Cork and Kerry. And we also work with the West Cork Development Partnership. So we're very pleased to be hosting the event this evening, and thank you for joining us. We, as a network, the Wellbeing Network supports individuals, families and communities to be proactive about looking after, improving and protecting their health and well-being. So for this evening, we're working with Cork GAA for this event, and the reason we approached the Cork GAA and talked to them about running an event like this is because sport is so important in our local communities and particularly in rural Ireland. It can be one of the main outlets for people in small rural communities. So the lack of that outlet for much of this year, of course, has had an impact at the highest level on players and coaches and club officers, but of course on supporters as well. And for young players and young people coming up through the ranks, where sport can be one of the primary ways they connect with their peers. Sport, of course, can act as a glue to bring communities together and to keep them connected. So in our discussion with the panel this evening, I hope that we will find out ways that sporting communities and clubs have done and can maintain and keep that connection live and stay positive during this time and during the pandemic where things are so different for everyone. That connection is so important for people's health and well-being. So that's why we wanted to kind of talk about the topic this evening. So just a couple of practical things I want to get out of the way for you as the audience. So we're using the WebEx webinar technology. So a bit like Zoom, you can choose your view. So you can choose speaker view, where the person speaking is on the main screen, and you can also choose a grid view. So it might be useful to choose the grid view as we move into the session, because we're doing it very much as a kind of discussion and a Q&A, so the grid view might work well for you. And please, I'd encourage you to engage and ask questions. So you have a Q&A function there on the right-hand side of your screen. You can type in questions or comments. So please do give us your thoughts, ask questions, and just get involved in the conversation. If you could type in the questions to everyone, and if you want to direct them to a particular panelist, just say that, because I'll be picking up those questions and fielding them through to our MC for the evening. So during the evening, you'll see me looking down and I'm going through the questions and pushing them on to our MC. So as I say, get involved. If for any reason your connection goes down during the event, just go back to the email I would have sent you and you can reconnect and hopefully you'll get back into the session. So in true sporting style, we have a couple of substitutes this evening to our panel. So with the great success of the ladies footballers at the weekend, Martina couldn't be with us this evening. She couldn't be spared from training. So we wish them well as they move forward. So I'd like to thank Emma Spillane for stepping in at short notice. So we're very grateful, Emma. And also, unfortunately, Keith Ricken is unwell at the moment and he's in hospital. So we wish him well in his recovery. And thank you to Barry Corkery for joining the panel this evening. We're very grateful. Our MC for this evening is Kieran McCarthy. Kieran is the sports editor with the Southern Star. He's going to take over now. So Kieran, I'm going to hand over to you to introduce the panel and just get the evening started. Thank you.
Cheers, Ita. Thanks very much. I suppose before I introduce the panel, just a couple of quick words. As sports editor of the Southern Star, I've seen the impact that COVID has had on sport of all levels, and that goes from the Olympians, our local Olympians who are gunning for gold at the highest level, to the footballers who soldier in the West Cork Junior D Championship. It's been a challenging year. It's been a year like none other, and every facet of sport has been affected in one way or another. Everyone here tonight loves sport, and we all know how important sport is in our communities and in our lives, how it brings us together. And I think we've seen that even more this year. In a normal year, inverted commas, our team's performance, it can affect our mood. If they win, we're happy. If they lose, we're sad. But I feel this year, sport took on an even bigger importance in our lives. Like Ida said, it's an outlet for people. It's a connection, and we've all been affected by this year. Players, officials, kids, parents, adults, sports editors, everyone. There was no GA games for a huge chunk of the year. Then we GA games behind closed doors with no fans. Then we had some fans. Then we had closed doors again. Then we had inter-county with no fans. So from that alone, you can see it's been an absolute roller coaster of a ride this year. But sport unites us. It creates debate. We have our opinions. We have our arguments. Who we think should have won this game, who should have won that game. It's something to talk about, and it's a common bond that we all share. And that brings us into tonight. It's a chat about how COVID has affected sport, and I suppose the challenges that it's created, but also how it's brought us all closer together and shown that when we're forced to think outside the box, that we do come up with some brilliant ideas, and there's learnings and silver linings that we can take from 2020 and carry them forward. So without further ado, I want to introduce our stellar cast and our star-studded panel for the night. I'm going to start with the First Lady of Bantry, Emma Spillane. She's a two-time All-Star footballer, one of the finest defenders in the country. And staying in Bantry, we've Cork senior footballer Rory Dean, one of the finest footballers in the country also. We're delighted to be joined by Kevin O'Donovan, the Cork CEO Secretary, one of the busiest men in the GAA and the man charged with resurrecting the fortunes of Cork GAA, and we're well on the way to that. And delighted too to be joined by Barry Corkeray. He's a performance coach with the Cork ladies football team and the Cork Camogie team, and he's also a behavioural therapist who works with HSE addiction services. So thanks to all the panel for making themselves available tonight. And I'm going to go to you first, Emma. I just want to see how you found the last 7 or 8 months since the COVID pandemic struck in March.
I suppose at the beginning it was very strange. We were in the middle of a college semester. We were meant to be in the O'Connor Cup semi-final the Friday before the whole country got locked down. So I suppose everything happened very quickly. At the beginning, I guess we thought it was only going to be for a few weeks, so we were all given out that we were going to be locked down for 2 or 3 weeks. And I suppose we didn't know at the time that it was going to go on, and we're still, just out of lockdown maybe last week. So at the beginning, I kind of didn't think too much of it, but I suppose after 2 or 3 weeks into the lockdown, it was kind of tough. You didn't really know what to do. You weren't really you didn't know when to expect to be back playing or back on the field. So it was kind of a matter of, getting out, exercising, doing things yourself. Keeping in contact with, different team members and stuff, and making sure, everyone was okay and whatnot. But I suppose the most difficult part for me, I thought anyway, was, not being involved with a team. I'm used to, playing team sport and always having, someone with you, whether you're in the gym or doing a running session or a training. So I suppose it was difficult, and it was hard to adapt to at the start. You were doing running sessions on your own, or you were, doing a home gym session or whatever it was. But I suppose through the summer then we kind of adapted to it, and we came out of lockdown and we got to, go back training and stuff. And I think it really made us appreciate it a lot more than what we did beforehand. For me anyway, I definitely appreciated football a lot more this year than I have in the past few years. So I thought going back to a team environment was very, very important. And I think everyone just enjoyed it a lot more because of that.
Rory, for you, so Emma just spoke there about how she found the first couple of weeks hard. I think every sports person and every person found those first couple of weeks in the first lockdown hard. For you, you were injured at the time. You had a hamstring injury and you were facing 4 months on the sideline. You got injured, I think, the end of February. So when the pandemic struck and everything shut down and you were back at home in Bantry, how did you find it then?
So I suppose being injured, it was a bit different to Emma. I was just focusing on sitting on the couch watching TV like the most of the rest of the population at that time. But I think I was very lucky in one instance. If I had got injured a week later, I wouldn't have got operated on until after everything had happened. The operation started in March. So look, I was lucky to get it done when I did. How did I find it? It was very boring at the start. I was off school a week before everyone else because I was recovering from the operation. I would have missed 6 weeks anyway, so it ended up I only missed 1 week. But I found it was very difficult because my wife was working every day. She was coming home and I was like a dog that hadn't been let out. I wanted to just get into the car and go, and she was wrecked after work, so she was raging with me. But when we were both off, then it was a bit easier, and Emma will testify to this. I'd say we live very close together in Bantry, so every day you'd be out cutting the grass. You were just, after 2-3 weeks, the novelty kind of started to wear off, and everyone was painting their houses and cutting their grass 8 times a day or something crazy like that. So that's generally what I found myself doing, was just out doing things around the house. And I think a lot of people put a lot of effort into that over the first couple of weeks of lockdown.
Barry, what impact did you find that the first lockdown had on you, especially, I suppose, in your work with the Cork football and the Cork ladies football and the camogie teams?
Is with HSE, so the services continued, patient-facing addiction services, and some up and down to Chile. By the way, my council would be opposite to raise the house hasn't been painted at all. So if you have free time, you're more than welcome up here. From the point of view of being involved in teams, obviously, with today's football and camogies and the Cork Miners, I suppose the full switch to doing a lot of work maybe online on Zoom and WebEx and platforms like that. Kind of maybe focusing on kind of resilience building, being adaptable, looking at your character, how would you manage the situation. I suppose I'd be doing typically a lot of that kind of work with teams inside in kind of group rooms and whatnot, in it, and teaching people all about emotional resilience. But certainly in the window we've just been kind of in and out of, and maybe gone back into again. I suppose maybe a lot of those skills maybe were quite helpful. So I suppose the focus changed obviously from on pitch work to maybe leaning on maybe people like myself doing the work. Would have done quite a lot of work with the ones with players as well. Kind of again through Zoom and whatnot. So very obviously very interesting time,
I presume for you, Kevin, I'll have a chat with you now. Kind of, it was such a challenging year because it was shaping up as such a big year for Cork GAA, and you're man used to dealing with challenges. But when the pandemic was thrown at us, how did it impact you on I suppose, on a work level, but on a personal level too?
Yes, Kieran, I suppose the first instinct was when you think back to that night of the announcement of the lockdown, GAA was the least important thing and the last thing. And then on that night, everyone was concerned about friends and family. And it was actually really easy because one email just killed the GAA stone dead that night. There was no question, is training still on tomorrow? Is that match going ahead Monday night? There was none of that. So it was really strange in that regard, and that it put GAA into context. But it didn't take long for the GAA heads of County Cork and the people in every club and every boy and girl who wanted to play to start saying, when are we coming back? So that nearly started within a couple of days. Showed you the importance of GAA. There's people need that colour in their life. And it's not a matter of life and death, but it's something else. It gives colour to life. So I think since then we've seen how important the GAA is. And as I've said to you plenty of times before, it's not that GAA stepped up to the plate and did good work. GAA just gave people a structure through which to do good work. We have the network, we have the facilities. What you saw was the best of Irish people coming through. But I think it's such a long time ago now. I think of the HSE meeting them in Park O'Keefe, discussing how the testing was going to happen. That all happened very quickly. I remember the bodies were being carried through the streets of Italy. We were discussing with the HSE about whether the gym would be needed as a morgue. All those kind of sound like crazy conversations now, but they were the conversations we were having. That was on the table at the time. And it shows what a success the regulations have been generally, that we never went in that direction. But all those things were on the table. Then we had where sponsors split the dust. Then the premium seat holders had to get a year's deferral on their payments, which would cost us hundreds of thousands of euros. Then the games were gone. Then we had to watch every pitch in Ireland to see who was training illegally. We had to go up to the UCC, to the farm, to see who was after jumping the gate there. Then we get a phone call, run down to CIT. There's another gang after jumping the gate there. Nobody on this call, obviously. And so we were kind of half safety mode, half mini police force. So roller coaster ride. Then we had a record year in terms of our gates. We felt coming. We had a new championship format, more competitive games. We knew our gates. We're going to get back to revenues of $1 million a year. We launched a season ticket. We sold those. Then we had a season ticket for games for which people couldn't get into. We offered them refunds. Then we got crowds of 200. The 200 was actually only 120. Then the premium seat holders, the season ticket holders, the board officers, the clubs, the players felt there are 120 tickets. But there was a few dark days in Páirc Uí Chaoimh as the phone rang saying, where's my ticket? Then we were praying there'd be another shutdown on attendances to stop the 120 coming in because it was causing civil war in the county. So you said it yourself, roller coaster ride, that's how it's been. But all the way through it, I think, and I highlight the role of the COVID officer, all the way through it, people doing their best to survive. And COVID officers, the poor individual in the club who got that job, we know none of us before what a COVID officer was. And next thing we're telling you, you're the COVID officer, and we're not quite sure yet what that means. That would be a metaphor for me for people stepping up to the plate. And despite all the fallout we've had, here we are still standing. We nearly got there with the county championships. We'll finish them soon. Our county teams have hit the road. Lead, female sports, underage sports, everybody got a run out. I think we should be thankful for small mercies. And I'd say it's been a fantastic year in how people dealt with it. And I think if we could just go one last final step now and stay in line with the regulations over Christmas, we'll be back in the field again soon.
You make a great point there, Kevin, about how clubs and sport in general dealt with I suppose the hard hand that everyone was dealt with. And Emma, go back to that first lockdown. You were involved in the fundraising initiative in Bantry, but it was every GAA club in the county, and you could even say the country. They put fundraisers on. They raised money for great causes, local charities, and so on. That was so important at the time because, as well as raising that money, it was bringing communities together at a very, very tough time.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose the one that kind of stands out to me was the Darkness into Light. That event runs every year, and I think it was just so important to be, able to raise funds for that for Pieta House. I think charities probably more than ever were hit so hard, and I think, as you said, like, it brought people together as well as raising money for Pieta House. And I really think, I know at home anyway, like, I'd say every single member of the club got involved, and we had people running or walking or whatever it was, 24 hours around the date that it was on. So I think that was really important to get everyone involved, and as well to raise money for such a great cause.
Barry, do you think that was very important for the mood of everyone, that the GAA clubs and sport clubs came together and had so many fundraisers on, that it did bring us together and did help us through that first lockdown when there was some very long days?
Yeah, I guess, when I see locally here in Ovens, in Farn and Erogue, my club, where we would have done our Darkness into Light, and just the feel good factor. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Even in myself, it was 6 or half 6 in the morning, and you're running down to the Ovens Bridge and taking a left back to the main road, and people, on the main road clapping you on. Very simple stuff, but like what it's all about, just bringing the people together. And we had our WhatsApp groups in, and you take your picture on the road while you were running, and you'd send it in, and just that sense of connection. And look, I hear the guys in Bantry on about the Bantry crowd connecting, and we were doing our piece, and right across the country this was happening. And I suppose in my world, in the work I do one day to day, we it's all about addiction and whatnot, and addiction is an awful lot of isolation and kind of withdrawing and loneliness, and the opposite of that is connection. And I suppose that day was a very symbolic day for people right across the country. That there was a real sense of connection, even if you weren't able to kind of shake the hand of the guy alongside you or put your arm around him or whatnot. But there was a great sense of togetherness about it. So, it was a special moment, right? But hugely important for people's mental health. Hugely important, to get out and to let off a bit of steam. It's obviously, it's critical, let's be honest, yeah.
Rory, Barry just mentioned there about connection, and he mentioned WhatsApp and Zoom calls took off this year. I think everyone has had like 1,000 Zoom calls. WhatsApp has been kind of going overboard, Instagram and all that. The role social media has actually played in keeping everyone together, because we all embraced technology. We all embraced the WhatsApp groups, and we all embraced Zoom calls and so on. And that did help bring us all together and keep us very close during that initial lockdown and ever since.
Yeah, so I suppose that's a big thing, and even Emma's point there about the fundraiser, Bantry, the 24 hours. Like, I know people from Bantry, say all over the world, that got involved in that fundraiser, and I think it made a little connection to home for a lot of people that may not have been home for a long time too, which was nice. And that actually made you think, let's reach out through our social media platforms or whatever and get back in touch with these people. Like, there are a lot of people that I would have played with underage that are no longer around Ireland. Like, so it gets you thinking about, oh yeah, there's their name on that sheet of paper. They're participating in the fundraiser. They're still Bantry people abroad, So you'd reach out and get in touch with them, and it was nice that way. Similar with the Cork fundraiser, like we did one for Pieta House as well, and like run the distance between all the clubs of Cork. Just people came up with some brilliant ideas, and there was a lot of fun in getting involved and getting them, up and running. There was a huge sense of unity, and as Barry said about the mental health element of it, like I wouldn't have said I was struggling with my mental health during lockdown or nothing, but it still made me feel good. So I can only imagine for people that might have been isolated or lonely at that time, like things like that could have been invaluable towards them too.
Kevin, how impressed were you with the ideas and the initiative that the club showed during lockdown and all year, to be quite honest?
Yeah, well, I suppose necessity is the mother of invention. And like I remember before our first executive meeting back in March, the jokes about Zoom and who had Wi-Fi and who had a phone and who could even type their name. And like there was all kinds of piss taking going on. And now we talk about Zoom as if we're experts on the thing. And then like I went into my father and uncle's one night. They were watching a West Cork Junior A football game. There was so much rain. The match now, I won't say the teams, but there was so much rain and fog. I told them they might as well look at the wall and go on Twitter and they'd get the same feedback. But that just showed how smart people were for action. And when there's hurdles there, people always get what they want in the end. So if it was people on Twitter who'd never been on Twitter before, people streaming games who'd never streamed before, people on Zoom who'd never been on Zoom before, now we're ready for next year. And while these will never replace physical human interaction, God, they're a great plan B to have for people, as Rory said, overseas, for people who are sick in hospital to see a game. So while we suffered this year, I think we'll get a massive kickback in future years where we'll have a choice now between physical interaction or there's actually a really good plan B that everyone is up to speed on. And I suppose the same thing happened with the AGMs recently. And again, there was a lot of hassle over that. Division AGMs, club AGMs, going on Zoom, going on Teams. Yeah, it's a real pain the first time. But then when we did it, why can't we have a few club meetings over those formats next year? And that'll allow the guy in college in Cork or the girl who's in Limerick in UL attend the club meeting on Zoom. Isn't it much better than the other way? So I just think there's options there for us. And the streaming has kicked off. Now, streaming will never replace being at a game. What about a person in hospital? Oh, don't they have a right to see a game? What about the elderly person who can't go out? So I just think there's a combination we can reach in the future now for smart. Nothing replaces meeting somebody for a walk. Nothing replaces meeting somebody for a cup of coffee. But if you can meet them, what's plan B? Now we have it.
I think you're right there, Kevin. When I saw the Carbery GAA held their AGM virtually just last week, I said Zoom is after, it's encompassing everyone. Everyone's after getting the Zoom bug, and it's great to see people embrace technology. And Kevin mentioned there about how the streaming has helped, I suppose, bring the games to everyone when people couldn't get in to see the games. And as a player with Bantry Blues Ladies this year, what was it like to play behind closed doors? It was just you, the opposition, and a couple of officials. It's probably something you don't want to experience again, but what was that experience like?
Yeah, I suppose it was strange not having a crowd there. We wouldn't be used to a huge crowd anyway with club games. But yeah, it was strange not having, let's say, your parents there, or, like there would always be a few hundred at the games. It was strange in that sense. But I think, as Kevin mentioned, like the streaming and stuff for like elderly people who, at the time wouldn't have gone out to those games anyway, even if they could have, got tickets, they wouldn't have been able to go. I think it's very important to like include those and keep those in mind when we're playing games, because those would have been the people who would have supported us all up along. And, it is unfair that they all of a sudden just can't go to any of the games. So I think a good few games were streamed, maybe not our club games, but with West Cork and stuff, the county final, that was all streamed. So I think that was really important, for family, friends, that they were able to see these games when a crowd wasn't allowed into them.
Rory, do you think that we appreciate sport even more now after going through what we had this year?
I would say 100%, yeah. Even us as players, I think we value it a lot more than what we would have previously. Like, I just know, say, from playing games this year, the amount of people that would have been texting and calling either before or after games was heightened a huge amount. I think people looked at it maybe as an area that, yeah, we can't go, but they actually probably bought into the streaming element of it because it was an outlet for them. Like, there was very little else to be doing. And I do think a lot of people appreciate it much more now after what we went through over the last 6-8 months.
A question has come through for Barry. Barry, in your coaching of teams, did you find players struggled with not having training and matches? And what advice were you giving them of what worked for them to stay upbeat?
Yeah. The I suppose the nature of the human condition, we're always trying to and there's something about playing games that kind of lets off a bit of steam as well. So obviously it was a challenge for players not being able to kind of bang into the next fella and take the ball up the field or whatever the case may be. So I suppose, look, we would have used it as a kind of a time for opportunity. You know, crisis equals danger plus opportunity, and obviously a very challenging time, but just as most maybe a chance to get to know yourself better. We'd have used it as a space as well, maybe to connect with the next player on the field, certainly for like the older players in panels to get to know the younger players in panels, and vice versa, particularly for the younger players in panels to be able to kind of maybe challenge the older guys and get to know them a bit more, and put some points to them and even look at giving feedback, because that's about developing your character and developing yourself as a person. So I suppose like they were certainly kind of opportunities that were there, things that we typically wouldn't have done before. Like very often, I suppose in life as in sport, we're always kind of in a rush, you know. So this maybe kind of almost forces into a situation where we just slow down slightly, and maybe at some level kind of get back to kind of what makes us Irish, that we connect with the neighbour better and we slow, you know. So it certainly would have helped, you know, kind of I see with teams, and like maybe the few teams I might have kind of been involved with, whatnot, where they would have used those situations very well, and a testament to the players that are there, where they would have used it as an opportunity, and maybe are bearing fruits down the line now, maybe facing the finals and all that kind of carry on. So you know, I suppose it was a strange one, but you know, even I can recall one night there we had a Zoom quiz, you know, but again, it brought the connection together, you know. There was loads of kind of players kind of videoing themselves, kicking balls into wheelie bins and all that kind of carry on. One of the things I would have, just to finish on this piece, one of the things I would have really impressed upon players and people was to just to compare yourself against yourself. Typically, as human beings, we like to kind of compare ourselves against the next guy. And I suppose in the window we were in, we didn't have that challenge on the field. So it was about kind of comparing maybe your last time to the next time that the battle was against yourself. That, you know, so yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Oh, great answer, Barry. And Kevin, back to you again, and just to touch on streaming, which you spoke about earlier, because that was certainly a huge success, and the Irish Examiner did brilliant work with that, and all the clubs across the county were showing games on Facebook Live and so on. So it's very important that's something we can take from 2020 and bring into 2021, the kind of the streaming of games, because like I think Rory mentioned it too, whether it's someone over in New York or down in Australia, they got to watch their home club again, they got to watch their friends in action, and again it just created that sense of unity and community with the GAA again.
Absolutely, but I think we need to get the balance right in it, because I'm sure Emma and Rory will tell you that they want people at their games. We certainly want people physically there, engaged in the thing, and the gates are important because gates drive the association, particularly inter-county level. You don't fill Croke Park for 2 All-Ireland finals, you have a problem with your finances in the GAA nationally from top to bottom. The same as if you don't have crowds at club games in Cork, right down from underage, those €5 paid going to an underage game. That's what keeps the wheel turning. So there's a very delicate balance there. So I don't believe in streaming every game, but I do believe in enough of it for the people who can't get there, and also for the people who every game want to see a bit of everything. So I'd be very much for highlights and so on, but maybe let's be careful about how far we go on it, because nothing beats the roar from the hill on match day. If it's a number 10 game on a Saturday morning, that roar keeps the thing going. So we need that, But I think it has opened our minds up a little bit into the people who are excluded. The person in the States, the person away from home, the person who's sick, the person who's elderly, the person who wants to see 5 games in a weekend and can only go to 1. So I'm not saying we've that figured out yet, but maybe just a balancing act. You see it with the soccer. The just total blanket coverage of soccer would almost turn you off at times. Because I remember waiting for that one soccer match when I was a kid, or the FA Cup final. You'd just be glued to it because you weren't force-fed a diet of it. So that's all I'm saying in streaming. I think it's been brilliant, but we've a balance to achieve when the crowds return.
I'm going to stick with you, Kevin, because we have a question through for you now. And it's saying, in what ways do you think the GAA will be changed by how things were impacted this year?
Yeah, I suppose the fixtures is always the one you start with in the GAA, maybe before the finance. In the fixtures front, I think we were forced into a structure and we survived, right? So we ran a 12-week championship program in 11 weeks. Aero got to 2 county finals, so you can do the maths on that. Neither of them got. We need 14 weeks for that. So the GAA has definitely changed because the split season has turned from being probably 1/3 in favour to 2/3 in favour. It has just flipped. Now, to be fair to those people who have changed their mind, including myself, it's because that split season now looks like it would come in July. So the club player would still get the month of August as a summer season. That split season comes into force in September. It's not much good to them. And I'd be interested to hear what Rory says, but I think Rory would probably enjoy that full engagement with the club and the full engagement with the county, as opposed to being pulled left, right and centre. The other one I'd look at is, like totally with Barry, that we need that physical contact with those players, and the very balanced programs involved with our underage teams. I'm not sure we need to train 5 times a week, and maybe we could learn that. And, maybe Rory do his training a night, and I know he does this anyway, a night in the week in Bantry, and not force him to drive to Cork 4 or 5 times a week, absolutely wearing these players out. So and we've great people in charge of our county team, so it doesn't happen as a rule. But just in that context, can we keep a little bit of the training alone? Can we keep a little bit of the technology? So I'm only talking about a small proportion. We don't just bounce straight back into where we were before. So definitely that. We can do some individual training or localized training in groups and small groups and so on. And the fixtures, we've got an opportunity now. We've seen a model that works. We need to grab it.
For you, Rory, like Kevin was saying there, we had this club-only window in 2020, and it worked an absolute treat. For you as a player, knowing that you had that time just with your club and you weren't getting called into county training and you didn't have to kind of divide your time up between county and club, what was it like for you to spend that time with Bantry Blues and focus on Bantry Blues and nothing else?
Yeah, I suppose, look, it was different for me still in the sense that I was just coming back from injury. So, like, the fact that I didn't really get to train all the game situations, which is what you want to do as a player all the time, is just play games. And I missed a lot of that. But just being in the one environment consistently, as opposed to, say, your gap month that was generally there, and then going straight back after one game, potentially maybe 2. It is challenging because the games are played at very different intensities. They're 2 completely different levels. You can't compare them like for like. So it was nice, and especially for me, let's say, coming back from injury, I don't think you would have been at a level that you could have come back from injury and go into inter-county. So I suppose it started with 20 minutes against Aero, easing into that, then getting a full game against Kishkame, and then getting another 2 games after, which was nice. I think there is a lot to be said for running the season off as a whole, as opposed to having it split. And I think Kevin is right, like, that we have to look at that and grab it if we can, because I think if we're pulling from all angles, the fatigue element of it does come in, because whether you like it or not, it is very challenging to get your mindset for one thing and then switch back onto something else. Whereas if you could consistently focus on one task and try and achieve your best at that, and then look, if you don't, reevaluate and you move on to the next step, be it club first or inter-county first, whatever way they go about it, I don't think anyone would complain. I do think it's a model that would work, and like, I know, like, my club coaches in Bantry, like, they want full exposure to you for a 10-12 week block, as opposed to having you for a session on a Sunday once every month, and then playing your club game. You have a 2-week window probably where they get you, and then you game and then you go back. Like, the consistency, like, you can't go back into a club team and play, missed every league game all year, every friendly. and expect to fit into the team, like they will look at you slightly different. And Emma probably feels the same when she used to be coming back as well. Like trying to fit yourself back in, sometimes you feel like a little bit of an outcast at times, because there could be 2 or 3 new people on the panel that year in your club that you mightn't have actually met until championship, you know. So I think it was lovely to just be there for a full 10-12 week block. Obviously the difficult thing of it then was that your family weren't there either, as Emma mentioned earlier, like that they're the big ones, you know. Like you're leaving everyone at home that was county and club, like that they weren't around, which was strange. But look, we found other means of keeping involved as well.
Emma, you've seen both sides of the coin. You've been involved with Cork ladies football teams, 14, 15, all the way up. And this is your first year of club owning. You've stepped outside the Cork bubble for a small while. And like Rory was saying there, you had that dedicated time with Bantry Blues. So you were back playing with your best friends, girls you've grown up with. For you, what was that like, just connecting back with them again and being back with those people you went to national school with, primary school with, and so on?
Yeah, definitely. As Rory said there, like you do feel like a bit of an outcast coming back from, you'd be training maybe once a month with your club, and then you'd come back and try play a game. And it sounds great. Yeah, you're getting great training with the inter-county set up and all that. But when you come back and try play, it's definitely not as easy as you'd think it would be. But definitely this year, yeah, I definitely appreciated the club a lot more than I have the past few years. And I really enjoyed playing with girls that I grew up playing with since I was 6 or 7. And yeah, it was great to be able to give full commitment to the club for the year. Whereas before, we would have been training maybe with Cork Wednesday, Friday and Sunday, and they would have been the exact same days with our club training. So you would have missed pretty much every session. And as well, you would have missed the friendly games or the league games as well. So it was definitely a special year for club football for me. Yeah.
I think like you said, Emma, we've seen what it's like when clubs get that dedicated window and how much of a success that was. And we've actually got a comment in from someone who's agreeing with what Kevin said about AGMs and Zoom. And the comment says, we had our highest number of attendees ever at a recent Zoom club AGM, with over 55 people tuned in from the comfort of their home, which beats a cold hall in November. I think we can all agree with that, the benefits that Zoom has had and technology in general the last couple of months. And we have a question for you again, Barry, and it is, if things continue to be behind closed doors well into the new year, do you think clubs need to be aware of keeping the connection with their member and supporters? And for all the panel, how do you think we can do that?
And even kind of doing their own little trainings and pods or whatever the case. As much kind of vision as possibly can be done. I mean, there are lockdowns, games with that. Encouraging individual athletes like runners or boxers to speak to players about what it's like training on your own. So again, using the time as an opportunity, but it's we've seen right across the year here where people, they're supporting their neighbour and going to to the inside Ballincollig, like we're near us, getting the shopping, bring it out to your neighbour. That kind of carry on. I think there'll be huge life lessons learned, and like I was saying a while ago, getting back to kind of value that we as Irish people inherently kind of come from, So I think that's important. I think Kevin's piece with regards to kind of the training piece, kind of will tap in as well, where at some level less is more. I think we'll be focusing maybe more on the kind of character building piece, more on kind of resilience and more on kind of living with vulnerability. Maybe we live in a world where we get whatever we want yesterday. So I think that there'll be kind of lots of learnings coming out of this, but. Yes, if we are kind of facing into kind of lockdowns or whatever the case may be in the future, I think the GAA and I know every other kind of sporting organisation, to be fair, will play a huge role in kind of people's mental health and supporting people, as they have done and will always do.
This is a question for the whole panel, and it's come in from one of our viewers. Did you see clubs doing things to watch out for younger players who might have been isolated this year without training and meeting the lads? I saw something Castlehaven manager was doing to keep an eye on players and keep them involved. So anyone feel free to answer that. Anything you saw any particular clubs doing this year to watch out for some of their younger members and players?
I could maybe take that myself. I have had a lot of communication managers and an awful lot of players. The GPs that are referring people on are nearly all GA people themselves. Even the Ballincollig crowd we might talk to, when it comes to things like that. But I suppose that it's I suppose what people would have done was maybe use kind of professionals and use the supports that were available to kind of to maybe use kind of maybe expertise and support people, right across to kind of the summer and right into the autumn period here in winter. Like, I've worked with an awful lot of players and people that would have been really struggling with their mental health. And it's a huge kind of challenge. So kind of looking after your own, so yeah, I can definitely advocate, my own personal experience that sports managers and clubs would have been kind of leading out and looking for kind of expertise and support, absolutely. And obviously kind of encouraging the senior players to kind of to lead the line as well and support. And equally, I suppose you'd say the senior player being the stronger player, very often the stronger player could be the guy that could be struggling as well. So that we're all kind of looking after one another.
Yeah, if I could add to that, Kieran, I suppose the inclusion part is important here because that's what the GA stands for. So, like, I go back to the skills challenges, which is a fun and silly way of engaging with people. And, it might be a minor element of the whole program and what Barry talks about. But, like, I think you can really capture there. I think of the skills challenges I saw over the summer, and I won't say an inter-county player from another county, and he was taking shots into a wheelie bin from 30 yards away and just popping them in at his ease, like probably maybe the most skillful hurler in the country. And my heart was sinking because I said, I can't do that one. And then I'd go to another one, and maybe some of the local people yourself, Kieran, like Paddy Crowley and James Mack, they all had ones. And it might be Paddy throwing the ball against the wall. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, I'd have a shot at this, and off I'd head out with the young fella to do that. So to me, it's always about inclusion. So when the skills challenges were inclusive and fun, that's the message I want to give to my kids. You don't have to be Maradona or Ronaldo. You can do this one, and we can do our version of it. And then I'd come back to the other part that I'd see about the connection. Think back to all the charity fundraisers. Did you see any division between ladies football, camogie, men's teams, old people, young people? I saw zero division, absolutely. And then I look at the nonsense that went on in the last week with the ladies footballers and the pitches and the way they were mistreated from start to finish. And I look at all the fundraisers then. So when it suits us, we're really inclusive. And then other times when it doesn't suit us, we kind of turn the other way. So that's my message. Like, if people are saying, what can we do for kids? It's the least of us. It's the person who isn't good at the skill. They're the ones we need to be looking after. It's the people who are not getting onto the pitch. They're the ones we need to look after. So, and I know I'm talking to two seriously elite players in Rory and Emma, but they're well catered for in our organisation. And I'm sure they'd recognise that. When we're talking about young people, think of the one that's not on the team. Think of the one that can't do the magic skill. Think of the one that, when the fundraiser is on, we want them, and then maybe when we're picking the team, they might get 5 minutes at the end. So that's what I've learned from this whole process. And it happened too in our clubs. Listen, you said about junior D warriors there at the start, Kieran. Don't worry, I didn't take that as an insult, though I should have. And like, look at all the people who made dramatic comebacks in their mid-40s this year. And I hope there weren't too many in their mid-50s for their own safety. But look at that. Look at the people who trotted down to junior training when it restarted in July. Fellas that hadn't been seen, fellas that were wearing the wrong shorts, fellas who just didn't give a damn anymore. They just wanted to go back playing. So I'd be thankful for small mercies in that. But if we're talking about young people, inclusion. I don't want to hear about elite stuff in that environment. I want to see what we're doing for the kids that are being left behind.
We have another question in now from a viewer, and Kevin, this is probably your best place to answer this one. the question is asking, are we paying enough attention to clubs who have suffered badly financially in the pandemic and who are now struggling to pay off loans and debt?
Yeah, and I suppose the big problem with the pandemic is so many typical fundraisers, such as the club lottos have been, stalled, and no clubs, I suppose they stopped them during the lockdown, then they started again, and now they're stopped again, and people are owed weeks and they have to run next year, maybe at very little return. Absolutely. And I suppose those challenges are there anyway. I suppose there's small risk in this, in that I don't want to undermine the brilliant work clubs did for charities. So that to me was that section, and it was important we did that. And now with AGMs, obviously clubs are concerned. And look, we've had this one before. Rebels Bounty is a hot topic in West Cork, but we were genuine in our belief that that was a non-line model to replace the Strictly Come Dancing, to replace the night at the Dogs. So there are alternatives if people are innovative. So like all the options here for games and for training, and some clubs, when there was no training, they just put up the hands in the air and stopped. Others went online like Barry. Others, when the lockdown stopped, were out training the week after in pods. Others are still training in pods of 6 and pods of 15. It's the same with fundraising and so on. There's always a way, but I think there needs to be a real drive from officers in a club to lead that. It's really easy for us to use COVID as the excuse for everything as well. COVID should be the reason for doing stuff now, not the reason not to.
There's been so many innovative ideas, like Kevin was saying there. What stands out for you that you've seen various clubs do this year, and what do you think we can bring into next year?
I suppose there was loads of quizzes and online things to get people involved in various different clubs. What kind of stands out to me was, I presume you all know Orla Farmer. She's playing with the Cork Senior Ladies. She finished her PhD in September, and it was a Gaelic for Girls programme. So I think literally nearly every day over lockdown, she had a different video up. And this is back to, involving everyone, and particularly, younger girls or even younger boys or whatever, just to practice a different, skill every day of the week. So it was something different every day. And I think that really, helped getting younger people involved. And they knew every day that they had, something new to look forward to, and, that they could practice this skill every day. So she'd do a separate video every day so they could follow that. And I think that really stood out to me as one of the, highlights of, including people and all of that during lockdown. I thought that was very important.
Like we've said a couple of times on this chat, there's been silver linings to this year. And I was chatting to Courcey Rovers captain Karen Cohan quite lately, and she led Courcey Rovers to their first ever county senior camogie championship win this year. After 21 years of playing senior, they finally landed the big one. And she made the point to me that because of COVID and dressing rooms were closed earlier in the year, that the Courcey's team decided to meet in Garrettstown Beach every Saturday morning for a walk along the water, bring a bit of breakfast, have a cup of tea. So instead of meeting in the dressing room where it was probably a serious club conversation, did a more relaxed and open chat on the beach together. And off the back of that, she felt they bonded more as a team, and they grew closer, and their friendships grew closer. And the end result is it helped them a small little percentage on their way to winning a first county senior title. And it's something Karen said the courses are going to look to carry into 2021 because they found it worked for them this year. So I'm going to go around to all of you here to ask, what are the silver linings that you've seen from 2020 that we should bring into 2021? And I'll go to you first, Rory.
Yeah, so just taking it forward, I suppose the fixtures and trying to have a defined season is a big thing that I think we've learned. And just to back up what Emma was saying there about the skills challenges for the young people, like I think we showed how innovative and creative we can be in engaging the young people. Like generally, it's very easy to coach the kids that are capable and the ones that are making the team, and it's the people that actually need the extra attention are the ones that are often forgotten. And I think the skills challenges are ways for them to excel, because they could have tried the skill 150 times and they got it right potentially once, and it's that video they can send in as a sense of achievement, I remember I was actually doing one of them for the primary school I went in Bantry, and the teacher, he's a Kerry man, and he was after setting up a cone that I just had to kick the ball through maybe 20 metres away. He was kind of saying, I must have tried it 15 times and missed every single one of them, right? So I figured out how I was going to achieve it so that we could get it right for the video. I told him stand behind the cone and I hit it first time. So it's the same for the kids, like that sense of achievement is huge. And I saw it in Bantry itself, like kids up in the Closh in Bantry kicking around during the lockdown. Like they were going out trying things they wouldn't have done before. And like that was invaluable. And if we could keep that going forward when they are collective training, we're going to be left with very talented players. If you can close the gap between the very capable and the less able, like it's going to be beneficial for all. And it's as an outlet, like their kids. I suppose the point being made about the fellas not getting enough game time and things, I'd hope coaching has gone beyond that at underage and everyone should be getting at least their half of football. And obviously people have to be resilient and sit on the bench and take their chance when it comes. But I think a lot of onus falls on coaches and people who are innovative in how they approach it to involve the inclusion element, but a skill that everyone can do, something basic like they were mentioned there by Kevin of hitting the sliotar into the bin. I don't think I tried it with a football, and I certainly wouldn't be doing 20 in a row, Kev, but we might try it sometime.
That's a video that I want to see, Rory, so send it on when it's completed. But I want to come to you next, Barry, and put the same question to you. What have you seen positives from this year that we should be using going forward?
Yeah, I suppose, look, the area is to survive, which is incredible, and it's amazing in the face of a pandemic how people responded here. I suppose, look, you know, the Rory would have mentioned the fixtures piece and the season piece, and I think the platform from this year or maybe offers an opportunity to kind of push on forward. It's our was a stand-up moment, maybe for myself personally. Typically, and I suppose we're talking about connection, typically we would go to Cork or go to Macroom or go to Ballincollig to participate in such an event. And the beauty of having our own money here locally, and the plan for 2021 is to do it over again. And I know we can raise money for the local, so we were able to do that. But the kind of the camaraderie and the whole parish coming together, you know, the young and old, the diaspora overseas, you know, with people in Sydney that were doing their piece there, just Rory were saying earlier, I suppose with regards to mental health, I suppose I think people learn an awful lot about kind of the value of kind of training for your mind, you know, not some kind of game, you know. And when and we saw it in the Kerry game, it's kind of looked as well, but I didn't.
Sorry, I lost you for a second, Kieran. Can you hear me?
Kieran, you were on mute there.
Oh, sorry, apologies. I was going to just ask Emma there for your big learning, Emma, your big silver lining to bring into 2021. And now Emma's on mute.
Sorry. I was laughing at you and I forgot to unmute mine. I suppose for me, I think this year is probably one of the most enjoyable years that I've been involved in the GAA. I think more than ever, like there's been a huge sense of like inclusion and community, like with the various different things, whether it was, you know, putting up videos like the skills videos we were on about, or even if it was, you know, delivering food from the supermarket to an elderly person's house. But as Kevin was saying earlier, like the GAA can be used as a platform without taking all the credit for it. You know, everyone has so many contacts through the GAA and stuff. And I think, you know, it was used more than ever this year to, you know, raise money for charities, or use social media to, you know, include everyone, whether it was young people or older people. So I think that can definitely be looked at going forward, how we can use this platform to, you know, benefit, let's say, other parties, or even benefit like everyone in the club and get everyone involved.
I'm going to put the same question to you, Kevin. What should we bring forward into 2021?
I think the really simple thing is it showed how interconnected we are just in the visceral, physical contact of the virus. So, like, it's really simple. If I want to play my bit of junior C football next year and for games to return, I need Rory Dean not to have the biggest house party in history in Bantry on Christmas Eve. And if he wants to play with Cork next year, he needs me to wear my mask to the supermarket. So that's kind of what I've learned about it. Yeah, there's times you leave masks in the car, so what's the difference? I'm not going to get it here. But it undermines the whole thing. And that'd be my feeling. And listen, the J would have to hold our hand ups in that, and this is nothing to do with the high profile ones that you know about. There was celebrations in clubs across the 32 counties this year. There was COVID cases came out of it. So let's be honest about that. I'm not talking for 1 minute about the high profile ones. I'm talking about almost every club in Ireland. Let's be honest. That's the national report we got from the GAA saying they weren't worried about the high profile ones in Cork. They said it was happening everywhere. So that's what I've learned, how much dependent we are on each other. And the virus is almost a metaphor for that. So I plan, and what I'm going to learn is wear my mask, even if it's pain at times, stick to the regulations. And then that's a better chance for us to be on a field next year. And then I would say, when we get to that field, is to enjoy it. I was lucky enough to be at the county games. Jesus, when you're lucky out of there and you know there's only 100 other people inside that venue, that's a fairly privileged position. So if everybody could get that next year, whether it's an under 12 camogie match, whether it's Rory at Cork Seniors, Emma playing with Bantry in a county final, when you're sitting on that bank, just take one look around you and say, I'm lucky to be here. And let's all do a little bit to get there. So that's what I've learned, is that my actions affect other people. And I mightn't be getting too many Christmas cards in the GAA at the moment around here, but we all have to get along to COVID. We have to get along because our actions affect each other. So that's what I've learned. So I'm going to wear my mask a little bit more now, as soon as I've said that.
And the very final question, it's going to go to you again, Kevin. It's from Paddy Duggan, and it is: do you think the experiences of COVID hasten the GAA initiative of the Healthy Club in County Cork?
Yeah, definitely, and it's something we should be doing anyway. But I think it accelerates, and that's when a curve shifts. That's what happens. Instead of going up along a curve and up along a graph, when it shifts, we get a big accelerating bump. So 100%, and there's clubs in Cork already who are there way ahead of us doing these programs. I won't name them now. There's a few locally. I think that's what a crisis does, as Barry outlined earlier. It makes us jump a little bit faster. Same as the split season for Rory. You know, same as Emma talking about the skills things. We should be doing all this stuff anyway. But a crisis makes us jump a little bit faster. And then you look back and say, why didn't we do it all along? So 100%, Paddy, we should be doing it anyway. We'll go a bit faster because of COVID.
Super, brilliant. Just want to say thanks to all the four panellists. That's Emma Spillane, Rory Dean, Barry Corkery and Kevin O'Donovan. And I think Peter wants to say a couple of words now.
Great, thank you, Kieran. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to make a couple of brief comments. We'll be finished on time by 8. So, Kieran, thanks again for keeping us on time, getting a really good discussion going. Thanks to our panelists, to Rory, to Emma, to Barry and to Kevin for your time this evening and, of course, in preparation for the event. So I know how busy you all are, as all of us are, so we really appreciate it. Just a very sincere thanks to Cork GAA and in particular to Des Cullinan for partnering with us and working with us in organising the event. So it's been a pleasure. So thank you for that. Devidas does the technical support for us on WebEx. Thanks, Devidas. And just to mention that this webinar has been recorded, so I'll have the link in probably the next day or two. So I'll send it to anyone who registered and feel free to share it if you think anyone will be interested in the content. And just to wrap up, at the beginning, I just explained the Wellbeing Network is all about promoting health and wellbeing in communities. And we've talked so much about community during the last hour. So one of the approaches we use is something called the 5 ways to wellbeing. So for people who want to be that bit more conscious and proactive about looking after their wellbeing, we all know the outdoors and activity in nature, all of that is important. But the 5 ways framework can be a really useful tool. So you might have a look at our website at thewellbeingnetwork.ie/West Cork, and there's information on that up there. And we also have community sections for communities across West Cork that highlight the kind of health and wellbeing supports that are out there and activities that are on your doorstep that might support you in, I suppose, being that bit more proactive of looking after yourself. I'm going to leave it there. So thank you all for joining us and have a very good evening.